Right, so the Wardencliff Tower. Now, Tesla wanted to make this, except his funding was cut off. So, this isn't like a hypothetical thing, allegedly. It is something that actually could exist. I was looking into it recently, and what it is, if I can understand correctly, it's essentially just a giant Tesla coil between the earth and the sky, right? So you've got the sky's electrostatic energy, and you've got the earth, which grounds that energy, and it acts like a capacitor. And during a thunderstorm, it discharges into the earth, and then otherwise it rises up and charges into the sky, right? So there's this discharge and release cycle electromagnetically. It's kind of like the cycle of the rain, I guess. You've got clouds in the sky and then they rain down, like a water cycle. You can think there's an electromagnetic, or technically like an electrostatic cycle, if you want to think about it that way. Now, this device, as I said, it's like imagine a giant Tesla coil with the dome on the top, and in the bottom you've got a grounding rod which goes deep into the ground. Now, this is probably hitting multiple underground water sources, I would imagine. Whether that has some kind of effect, you would assume, running electricity and water, it kind of creates higher amperage and heat and all this kind of stuff, while in the earth it's more, I guess, conductive. It's kind of a poor conductor, but it seems to work nonetheless. And it was tuned specifically to the frequency, the whole resonant, because it functions as a resonant circuit, or an LC circuit, which is like your capacitor inductor circuit. Technically, I guess it is, an inductor. The Tesla coil is actually an inductor itself, or you can think of it as a transformer, because the Wardencliff Tower was, I think it was in like the many millions of volts, so it's very high voltage and very low amperage, of course, because you're turning amperage into voltage. So that's kind of how I think that's how it. Okay, so the frequency was I think Tesla said it was 11 point something, 11 point, I don't know, was it 23, or because the Schumann resonance of the Earth is 8.68 hertz or something like that. Basically 8 hertz, right? Tesla measured it to be around 11. Whether he's more accurate or the Schumann's more accurate, we'd have to do tests, right? Because it needed to resonate with the Earth's frequency, because it used the Earth as a conductor. And this is where people get things wrong, I would imagine, and they don't really understand. I'm still trying to understand this myself. Probably some of you listening know more than me. I'm just going to put that out there. But electromagnetism supposedly is what you would call a Hertzian wave, which means that it kind of, do you know the idea of the electric field and the magnetic field and how they pulse in and out? So imagine a beam, or imagine a sphere going forwards in space, and it's leaving a trail behind it in the X direction and the Y direction. And what that means, it means up and down and left and right, and one of them's the magnetic field and the other is the electric field, and it's pulsing, so it's going from the sphere out of the sphere. So imagine just the field of one of them is going both down and up, and it expands out, and then it contracts into the sphere, and it's this rippling wave effect. And then, of course, right and left, it's going out of both of those sides as well. That's what you call a transverse or a Hertzian wave is. But Tesla believed that electromagnetism is actually something called longitudinal. And I think, if I remember right, I'm going to have to look at, if you know the YouTuber Theoria Apathasis. I think he talks a lot about this stuff. I'm going to have to look into him. I recommend looking into him as well. He's got tons of videos out on Tesla and all this kind of stuff, about the wave, about how this stuff actually works waveform wise. And a longitudinal wave, instead of kind of expanding out and in, what it does, if you understand how AC power works, with AC power, you've got a sine wave that goes from, like, let's say, positive 12 volts down to negative 12 volts, but it's like it slowly goes from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. till it hits 12. Then it goes slowly down 12, 11, 10, 9, 7, which forms this waveform to 0, and then it goes negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, all the way to negative 12, negative 11, negative 10, negative 9. So it's this like smooth waveform of, you know, rippling between positive to negative, and the hertz is how many times per second it does that. So if you have 50 hertz, 60 hertz power, it's doing that 50, 60 times. The reason why this is kind of a standard and a thing is because we used, generally it was 3-phase motor. I think it was 3-phase motors, at least they're used now. I don't know if they use 2-phase motors. Basically, if you look into an AC motor, it goes between positive to negative, because that's how it pushes. You know, it needs to repulse and then to attract, and to repulse and to attract. Basically, when it's absorbing energy from something moving it, it's going between positive and negative magnets or coils or whatever. So that's why it does that. So going on, the longitudinal wave, instead of pulsing in and out as it's going, it goes like forwards and backwards, I think. And for right, again from Theoria Apathasis, I think he said something to do with the idea of ether and electricity is that when you connect two things in a circuit, it's like it instantly manifests, and it just kind of like, there is no speed. Technically, there is no speed of electricity and light. I mean, you can actually measure, you know, you can measure a circuit, but there's some other thing that goes on apparently which kind of negates that from another lens. And I would imagine, you just imagine like 2 points and you connect a circuit and it's rippling back and forth, so to speak, between those, right? And that's like the AC, right? Like the AC wave. And is it just that Tesla was just, you know, he was getting cooked by so much AC frequency that he saw the world in AC frequency? I don't know. And apparently sound is like that. It echoes back and forth. I don't really understand. Oh, maybe that's what an echo is. Yeah. So like echoes, I guess. That's how they Tesla thought electricity is longitudinal, not transverse or Hertzian. Now, from what I understand, because this is all hinging on some guy called Maxwell. I know people talked about the Maxwell equation. I don't know, is that the same Maxwell or something? But apparently this Maxwell guy pretty much disproved that it was longitudinal, and he said that it was Hertzian or transverse. And it's like, do you want to trust some like physicists from hundreds of years ago that actually there's been disputes about Maxwell, and there's been repeatable experiments that prove there are longitudinal expressions of electromagnetism, if you get what I mean. So this isn't one of those things like, because I had to get this information from the AI, and if I ask the AI about like, I don't know, something that's really occultic, it'll just kind of tell me like, nah bro, like I'm sorry, like I'm fed with Wikipedia and Reddit, you know, like that's, I mean, no, the AI is not me, of course, you know. I get my sources from from I don't know, divine channeling, right? But it was actually working with me. It was actually giving me a lot of information, because is actually contradictory stuff. I imagine if you look into Eric Dollard, he probably has some good information on this. I think he did something, I'm not sure. Another guy to look into is actually a YouTuber. If you look at Old Man Builds, so Old Man Builds, like building stuff, right? He actually is making these Tesla coils. He's making, like, imagine like a miniature Wardencliff tower, and he grounded it in dirt, and I believe he got another one to resonate, or he got like a bulb to glow off it or something. But he used like a bucket of dirt or something, or a container of dirt, to kind of prove the experiment and idea. So he's done a lot of stuff. I'm gonna have to look back into him, because again, the Wardencliff tower. I should have just gone to the idea of it. The idea of it, the purpose of this Wardencliff tower is actually to transmit both power or data. So, you know, back then they had like transmitting towers for communication, for radio communication, all that. It would be like that and power as well. And because you can transmit data over a transverse wave just fine. You know, that's what our current data transfer is. And the higher the frequency, so once you start getting into the gigahertz, it doesn't penetrate physical material things as well, right? That's why it was tuned to 11 hertz, is because the lower the frequency, the more that these waves will penetrate material things. So again, you imagine you have a bunch of these Wardencliff towers set up in like every country. It'd have to be, geographically, you'd have to figure out a formula for best, transfer. So like X amount, every one per 2,000 kilometers or something, per 1,000 miles. So you'd have to figure that out, right? But imagine you have a bunch of these towers, the same way we have cell frequency towers, and you can use a device to, I don't know if you'd have to ground it into the earth, but at least every house would have a device that you could wirelessly gain power from and data. And maybe potentially you could just have a cell phone and just charge it from nothing. Or it'd still be from energy. You'd be using energy, right? And it'd be measured and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know. Again, I don't know if it was from or if you'd have to plug it into the ground, or if you'd have to go near a node. There'd be kind of like how we have Wi-Fi routers. So it's getting loud outside. Wi-Fi routers to kind of repeat the signal. Maybe we'd have data. I'm assuming we'd have power transfer repeaters or something like that. Yeah, if you get what I mean. I think it was JP Morgan didn't want to fund it because they wanted to put a measuring device on the use of electricity so they can charge for it. Now, I still think you could technically put a measuring device on this, but it's kind of like pirate radio, or people who used to have pirate antennas to get, paid radio and paid television services. People would be able to do that. So you can get small amounts of power currently off the cell towers actually, but it's so small that you can really only run signals, right? It's like micro. Is it micro or I don't even think it's a millivolt. I think it's micro or microwatts or something, right? It's so small. But my idea was if you could make an array the same way that we, if you understand how a RAM chip works, it's a bunch of, little circuits, right? What if you had a bunch of circuits, you made a PCB for harvesting radio frequency? I think it's possible you could get a watt or something, right? I don't know, maybe. So that's just something to think about, just for current technology. But otherwise, I really wanted to get the idea in everyone's head about the Wardencliff towers. Again, it's just like a Tesla coil giant transformer, giant inductor between, I guess you would say, the positive energy of the sky, which is that electrostatic, and the grounded energy, which is our ground. You know, if you have your home electrical system, it's got a rod deep into the earth, right, to ground it. It's just that, and then it's just resonating, and it's using the earth as it's actually transmitting energy through the earth. Okay, so this is, to finish off, I think this is how Tesla got the idea of it being longitudinal, is that people keep thinking it's transferring energy through the sky, but the way that I saw it is that the sky might not be a good medium for transfer of lots of energy. You can use like microwave beams or like laser beams and such to transfer energy. That is a thing that we've got now, but it's kind of, I would say, you wouldn't want to stand in front of a microwave beam while energy is being transferred. You're gonna get zapped, right? So the earth is probably it can probably handle more energy, right? Physical things can handle more energy, the same way that, unfortunately, something like petrochemical fuels are more fuel dense, more energy dense than batteries, right? Vastly more. And the denser the fuel, so diesel has more energy than gasoline. Gasoline has more energy than, if you have a gas car, I don't know if it's butane or something, whatever gas they use. So the more volatile, the more like subtle, the less energy, and everything's dispersed more, right? But the quicker it is, like gas is quicker than liquids, right? Fire is, I guess, would be, the plasma element is quicker than air. Is it? I don't know. Actually, the wind's pretty quick. I'd have to look into that. I guess speed of light, technically light is quicker than air, because light's quicker than sound. And then the next thing is that when you are using super strong amounts of energy, supposedly there is actually a measurable longitudinal field for like a kilometer or two around the around this device, around this Tesla coil, we'll just call it. So whether that means you only get like a range of 2 kilometers to transfer power, and you get like a range of, I don't know, 100 kilometers to transfer data, I don't know, right? Like that could be a thing, and then you'd have to build them everywhere, which is kind of impractical. But again, I think I think the main thing is that it's transferring of the ground. I think that's a really important thing, and that is actually, you're transferring the power through the ground, right? So I don't know. That's just seems to be an important thing. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed, and just give it a think, and look up those people, as I said, that I mentioned. Old Man Builds, Fiore Apathasis, Eric Dollard. I said Maxwell. He was the one who debated against it, and just like ask the AIs to understand it better.